What is up, guys? I thought I would do an interesting video now. I've seen a lot of people doing doing that kind of top 10 lists for the WWE 2K games, and obviously going from worst to best. So I thought I would do my takes on the games and rate them from worst and what I think was the worst and what I think was the best. So we start off the list with WWE 2K20, which is probably the most infamous game that 2K have ever released. Obviously, it was so bad when it first came out, and I still don't know how 2K were even able to release a game that was that bad. I mean, obviously, you think about the fact that they had to they cancelled WWE 2K21 and instead released 2K Battlegrounds. I think that says it all. The fact that they cancelled 2K21 and didn't bother to chose not to release that game, instead choosing to take a year out, and then instead released WWE 2K22 in March of 2020, obviously in March of 2022. So I think that says it all about how bad the game was. I mean, I remember playing the game. I remember playing 2K Showcase. The 2K Showcase. I was very excited about that because it was obviously focusing on the four horsewomen, that being Bayley, Charlotte Flair, Sasha Banks, and Becky Lynch. Now, unfortunately, due to the amount of bugs and glitches there were in the game, for me, the 2K Showcase was unplayable. I mean, respect to those who actually managed to complete it, and actually managed to complete all of the matches, because I could never get through the 2K Showcase mode without the game crashing. Like, the game crashed so badly, it was unbelievable. I remember the issues with community creations as well. Now, I'm someone who is always, every time the new game comes out, community creations is one of the things I'm always very heavily focused on. It's one of those things that I kind of put a lot of time into and put a lot of effort into. Now, obviously, I remember that the logo corruption in WWE 2K20 was obviously we're looking at the top 10, so this is number 10. 2K20 is number 10. So obviously, I mean, looking at the community creations, I remember the logo corruption was such a huge issue on 2K20. It was like you would download something from community creations, you would go to view it in the Edit Superstar section, and the logos would be completely corrupted. The logos weren't there, they would be gone. But there was a way to solve this problem. What you would have to do is you would have to delete the Superstar, then go to deletion utility, delete the images, and then re-download that Superstar that you had previously downloaded, which unfortunately had the logos corrupted. Now, there were many problems that year with 2K20 community creations. When you tried to download certain things, the download wouldn't finish. The game would basically just crash, and you would have to reload the game. There was also the problem where when players got to zero down, if you had you had a maximum of 20 downloads per day, so it'd be 24 hours. But there was an issue where when players were actually reaching 0 out of 20 downloads, which usually meant you weren't able to download any more creations for 24 hours. The game wasn't registering that players had actually reached 0 out of 20 downloads. So what was happening was people were being able to download new stuff even after they had reached the limit, and obviously after they had reached 0 out of 20 downloads. Unfortunately, this issue was very quickly patched by 2K. I mean, it wasn't a bad problem. I think a lot of players found it quite useful, because it meant that, but it was also, I think the reason that 2K patched it was because it meant that players were getting basically an unlimited amount of downloads, per day, as the game wasn't registering the fact that the player had actually reached, the 0 out of 20 downloads. So it was a bit of a problem. I remember there was that game breaking issue on New Year's Day as well. Now, this was really the weirdest and most bizarre glitch or bizarre bug I have ever seen in a video game. So basically, on New Year's Day 2020, people weren't able to play the game because every time they would try to access one of the game modes for WWE 2K20, the game would crash. So thankfully for players who played the game on PlayStation, there was a workaround for that glitch or bug. What players on PlayStation were able to do is reset their date and time settings back to 2019, which meant that the game would work without any issues. Unfortunately for players who played the game on Xbox, there was no workaround for this glitch, which meant that they had to wait for a patch to come out, which if I remember correctly, didn't come out until around February time, which is also around the same time that one of the DLC packs was released. So unfortunately, obviously it was a bad run for 2K20. The Superstar models were really horrible as well. Even The Rock looked atrocious in that game. I think we all know what caused the problems. Obviously, the fact that Utes left so late into the development. Obviously, they parted ways with 2K in August of 2019, and the game was due to be being released 2 months later, on the 22nd of October 2019. So they brought, once after Utes had sort of parted ways with them, they brought Visual Concepts in, and obviously Visual Concepts didn't really have a lot of time to work on the game. I think that was that was a beneficial thing for WWE 2K22, is with them kind of cancelling WWE 2K21 and actually taking a year out. It meant that Visual Concepts were able to really do some good work when it came to WWE 2K22 and actually put out a game that was rock solid when it did come out. Obviously, I think it's always fair to put WWE 2K20 as the worst and put that in the number 10 spot. So in at number 9, we have WWE 2K24. Now, there are a few different things that ruin the game for me. First is the online servers. Now, the servers for 2K24 are absolutely outrageous. There's so many, it's hard for me to do, because I love doing community creations. But most of the time, it's hard for me to do that because I'm constantly randomly losing connection to the servers for no apparent reason. Sometimes it can be like within minutes of me loading up the game, I'll lose connection to the online servers. Sometimes it can be 20 minutes, half an hour before I lose connection to the servers. And I emailed to Hay the other day to complain about this, as I was getting, fed up with the fact that I was trying to do community creations and couldn't do it, because every time I was trying to do community creations, I was losing connection to the servers. As soon as I loaded up the game, I was getting the error message saying unable to connect to the servers, and there didn't seem to be any reason for that. And they emailed me back saying that they were asking me what my PlayStation ID was, asking me, if I was with PlayStation Plus. I don't know why they needed to know if I was a PlayStation Plus member, because, it seems a bit of a random question to ask. They were asking me to send photographic or video evidence of this glitch occurring, but I don't know how I can send a video in when I don't, because I could be recording a video for an hour, I could be sat recording a video for half an hour before it happens. This is the problem, I can't record it because I don't know exactly when it's going to happen, when I'm going to experience this glitch, because it happens so randomly. And this is what I've said to them, is it's like, I can't record, it's like, how can I film it, how can I get video proof or photographic proof of this glitch happening when it's happening so randomly? It's just a huge problem. Now, the other thing that I was not happy with is the DLC lineup was pretty decent, but the only DLC pack that I wasn't happy with, and I think a lot of people were, unhappy about this as well, was the Pat McAfee DLC pack. Now, I to be honest, I never understood. I'll never understand why they actually released that DLC pack. There's nobody asked for it. Nobody wanted it. It's like I would have preferred to have seen you know, some of the NXT stars like Obafemi and Lexus In. I would like to have seen them in the game rather than have a load of guys in the random guys in the game that nobody was, you know, nobody had even heard of or was really familiar with. Because let's face it, I mean, how many people really know like the likes of Ty Schmidt and Boston Honors? There's hardly anybody who's actually familiar with those guys. I mean, yeah, people are perfectly familiar with Pat McAfee, but people are not that familiar with the likes of Boston Honors and Ty Schmidt. So why the hell did 2K feel the need to add a DLC and add them into the game? There's nobody's gonna play with those guys. Nobody even knows who they are, or is even that familiar with them. So why add that kind of DLC into the game? And again, it wasn't something that players had even asked for. You know, nobody even wanted a DLC pack with those guys in it. You know, I think that was a DLC that could have been used for like more people from NXT or more legends or something like that. Not a load of random guys who people don't even know or are not even familiar with. You know, the problem with 2K is like when you report an issue to them, it feels like they're always fobbing you off. That's what it feels like all the time. It feels like they're sort of fobbing you off a little bit, like they're not interested. You know, that's what it feels like. I think they know that the servers are really bad for the game, and they know that the servers shouldn't be that bad, but they're just not bothered in doing anything about it. So the problem is the servers of the WWE 2K24 have been bad for months. I would say they've not been brilliant, they've not been that bad, they've not been great since the game was released. You know, the servers should have been properly fixed months ago. You know, the fact that the servers are still this bad even now just shows that 2K don't really give a damn. Because if they did give a damn, they would have sorted this problem out. They would have actually fixed the servers properly months ago, which they never bothered to do. There's also that bald hair glitch in the game where if you actually download certain superstars in the game, they've all come out bald for some reason. I think that was like because of the double hair glitch. I've also noticed there's a glitch in the game where if you try to download a certain superstar or download certain attires for a superstar, you'll get an error message saying that the download has failed because the content is damaged. And unfortunately, there doesn't seem to really be a right around to avoid this glitch. It's obviously it's a frustrating thing, but it is what it is. You know, I'm not saying that 2K24 is a horrible game. I mean, gameplay wise, it is it is pretty good. You know, and I was impressed by some of the match types that were improved. I do hope that they improve on some of the match types for 2K25, like with the special guest referee. I hope that when 2K25 comes out, we can do special guest referees in tab matches and things like that. That would be very cool. I mean, obviously, you know, I am excited for 2K25. I think everybody is excited for it, and I think everybody hopes that the servers are going to be so much better when that game comes out in March, which will inevitably be the release date for the game. Hopefully we get a good strong DLC lineup as well this year. Hopefully we don't get a DLC pack that nobody asked for. You know, hopefully 2K don't repeat the same mistakes they made for 2K24. So moving on now to the number 8 spot for me is WWE 2K15. Now 2K15 is a game that I played on both PS4 and on Xbox 360. Now, for me, that there are some negatives with the game on PS4. Like, there's no legends in the game. You know, there's no, like, the game is very bare bones on next gen, on like PS4 and Xbox One. But when you play it feels like when you play the game on Xbox 360 or on PS3, yeah, the graphics are not that great, but there's still so much more. There's still so much to do. There's so many more match types in the game that aren't in the game on next gen, which doesn't make sense. You know, that's one of the things that doesn't make sense to me is why do the games on next gen on Xbox 360 and PS3 have more match types than the actual game on the PS4 and Xbox One. I mean, yeah, the graphics are really, are pretty good on the next gen on the PS4 and Xbox One versions, but there's just nothing really. There's not really anything to do in the game. The career mode for 2K15 is garbage. And it's not something that it feels like you can invest a lot of time in, because it feels like you would get very bored of it very quickly. The 2K Showcase mode wasn't bad. I enjoyed the Hustle, Loyalty and Respect Showcase with CM Punk, John Cena and all that. And I enjoyed the other showcase, the Best Friends, a bit of Enemies, which focused on Triple H and Shawn Michaels. I enjoyed that. I feel like that's the only 2K game where we've actually had multiple showcases. After that, we've only ever had like one showcase. But in 2K15 we had the two, which was obviously the Hustle, Loyalty and Respect and the Best Friends, Bitter Enemy showcase modes, and they were both pretty good, I have to say. I did enjoy them, but I just think that the reason I don't like the game on PS4 is because it's very bare bones and there's not much to do. I much prefer to play the game on Xbox 360 because it feels like there's more match types in the game. There's more to do in the game, to be fair. So moving on into the number 7 spot, we have WWE 2K18. Now, WWE 2K18, not a genuinely bad game for me. I enjoyed the game. I was a big fan of the DLCs we got for that game. The DLCs that we got for that game were fire, man. We got her, obviously we got her Angle, we got John Cena, we got the 06 and 010, 2000, we got 2006 and 2010 versions of John Cena. We got Rob Van Dam, we got Batista, we got the Hardy Boys, we got Beth Phoenix. The game was stacked. We got names like, obviously we got NXT names like Drew McIntyre, Aleister Black, Elias. So we were spoiled for choice that year when it came to DLCs. Like, they were, the DLCs were very, very good. Gameplay wise, really, really not a bad game. Graphics are pretty decent. And I think that graphics for 2K18 still hold up pretty well. 7 years later. But, I don't feel like there's really anything too negative I can say about WWE 2K18. I think that obviously I like the fact that we could access like more areas backstage. But that was one of the things that was introduced in the previous game. But you were limited to the areas you could sort of access. But at least with WWE 2K18's backstage area, you weren't really limited to the areas you could access. You could access more areas in that mode, in that backstage area, which was good. I feel like there were a lot of things that were improved on in 2K18. I think it was overall a decent game. So in at number 6, we have WWE 2K16. Now, 2K16 for me, it's not a bad game for the most part. I think there is a lot that would be done with it. It wasn't a bad game. I enjoyed the showcase mode. Obviously the Stone Cold Steve Austin showcase mode, I thought that was really good, to be fair. You're looking at the game and you're thinking, wow, they've done a really good job with it. They didn't do too bad a job with that. I think they improved a lot on 2K15. The superstar models look very good. Still wasn't really a big fan of the career modes, but never really touched on that in 2K16. Never really played that, to be honest. I think I invested more time in 2K Showcase and also in Universe mode as well. I enjoyed, I did enjoy playing the game, and I still enjoy going back and playing it now because it's not a bad game. I think that it would be a little bit unfair to say that the game is trash because it's not that bad for the most part. I think there's a lot that is still being improved on, but it's not a bad game for me. It does come in, which is why it comes in at number 6. So number 7, so number 5 is WWE 2K15. So 2K15 was not particularly the worst game I've ever played, but I think that there's a lot that could have improved on. They improved on the game from 2K16. The game was pretty bad. I mean, I didn't buy any of the DLC because I wasn't playing online at the time, and I didn't have access to like the PlayStation Store and things like that. So I didn't buy the DLC for that game. And I mean, I was a bit gutted when they sort of got rid of the 2K Showcase mode, because that was obviously one of the popular game, like the most popular game modes, which is why I was so glad when they kind of brought it back in 2K19, because it felt like a bit of a mistake to kind of get rid of that. For the most part. And then obviously the backstage arena, as I spoke about just now, I was saying that it wasn't right. Like it was you were very limited to what you could actually do, and very limited to the areas you could access backstage. It wasn't that fun. So I remember I didn't like it wasn't that fun to play a backstage brawl in 2K17 because the backstage area was so small. Like there wasn't much in many areas you could access. There wasn't much you could do. So the backstage brawls got very boring very quickly, and it's a shame to say, but apart from that, 2K17 was for me a pretty solid game, and a game that I actually didn't think was too bad for the most part. I mean, some people may think 2K17 was awful, but I don't think it was awful. I think it was pretty good for the most part. So moving into the number 4 spot, we have WWE 2K22. So WWE 2K22 was a game that came out after let's do 2K23 for number 4. So 2K23 wasn't a bad game. Obviously, we got the introduction of the War Games match. And, the game for me, it wasn't bad. I liked how they did the John Cena Showcase mode. I thought that was pretty interesting. It wasn't a god-awful game, but, I liked it for the most part. The reason even now when I think about it, like the servers for WWE 2K23, I felt like they were pretty good. Like, I think I very rarely lost connection to the online servers while playing that game. I feel like I had a much better time with the online servers for WWE 2K23 than I have had with the online servers for WWE 2K24. I do think that 2K did a really good job with that. I mean, some of the, the superstar models were a bit rough around the edges, but most of them looked pretty good. I think that, the DLC lineup for that game was pretty decent for the most part. We got some decent names in those DLCs. Then it's not really, graphically the game that's solid, just as the previous game had done. It feels like there's not much I could really say about 2K23 because it was a solid game for the most part. There wasn't really anything that I would say was, horrifically bad about it. I think it would be a little bit critical to say that the game was an absolute mess. I think the problem with, the things I've seen, the thing I see a lot of people said about WWE 2K23 is it was basically just, basically a copy and paste of WWE 2K22 with, updated arenas and updated attires. And in a way, it did kind of feel like that a little bit. It did kind of feel like WWE 2K23 was just a copy and paste of WWE 2K22 with the updated arenas and updated attires and things like that. You know, it felt like there wasn't that much different between 2K22 and 2K23, which was the main problem with the game. You kind of think that things would have been a lot different for 2K23, but they weren't that different. You know, they didn't feel that much different in comparison to WWE 2K22. So, moving into the number 3 spot is WWE 2K22. Now, WWE 2K22 came out in March 2022 and was the game that was released 3 years after the travesty that was WWE 2K20. Now, I still have a lot of love for the game. Like, the game was so good when I was so excited for it, and you know, I remember the first few months I played the game, I was in love with the game. I was so impressed by how good it looked. Like, the superstar models looked amazing, the arenas looked incredible. Like, everything about the game was just incredibly smooth. You know, it felt so good to be able to actually finally be playing a solid 2K game. You know, and to finally be playing a game that was actually, you know, a solid game to play. Because there's no denying it. There's no denying that WWE 2K22 was really good. I mean, that's the last game I played where I actually completed the showcase as well. I was, playing as Rey Mysterio. The only thing I would say about the Rey Mysterio showcase, the only downside to that is it felt like there should have been some matches in it that weren't included. And it felt like some of the matches that were included didn't really make any sense. Like, they included a random Raw match with Rey Mysterio versus Gran Metalik. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why has that match been included in the 2K showcase mode? Why is that? What was the significance of that match? It felt like there were other matches that should have been included in that 2K showcase mode that were more important and were more significant, but they weren't included. You know, and then you've got but they chose to include matches like Rey Mysterio versus Gran Metalik. Like, why did that? What was the significance of that match? Why was it so important for that match to be included in 2K22's 2K showcase mode? I mean, people probably didn't even remember that match. You know, at least they had done is added some matches into the 2K showcase mode that people actually remembered and are actually more important and more significant. That's the only downside to it, you know. I mean, Rey, other than that, the game, as I said, pretty good for the most part. There's not really anything too bad that can really be said about it. You know, it has to be said. So, moving on to the number 2 spot. In second place and coming runner-up is WWE 2K19. So it was a very hard decision for me to choose between WWE 2K19 and WWE 2K14. I wasn't going to include 2K14 on the list, but I've included it anyway. So yeah, then WWE 2K19, I love that game. You know, it's like, little did we know what the horrors that would lie ahead of us, a year later. You know, the horror that was 2K20. It's mad to think that so many people actually went back to WWE to play in WWE 2K19 because WWE 2K20 was so bad. You know, and there was all these petitions being started up by people who wanted the servers for the game to be kept up. And 2K did actually do that. They did actually keep the servers up for WWE 2K19. And they actually didn't shut them down until the summer of 2022, and in the same time around, at the same time they also shut down the servers for WWE 2K20. I mean, 2K19 was a really, really solid game. So I actually really enjoyed playing it. I really did enjoy the DLC lineups for that game as well. I feel like you really got a lot right with that game. Even the 2K showcase mode was solid. You know, I really enjoyed playing through like the career of Daniel Bryan, that was a really good showcase to have in the game. And it was really good to see 2K Showcase making that return to WWE 2K19 after being absent in the previous two games, those being 2K17 and 2K18. I think if I remember correctly, 2K17 did actually have a showcase, but it was locked behind the DLC. So, well, I don't know how that made any sense, but there you go. I mean, the game wasn't horrendously bad. I actually still really enjoy going back and playing WWE 2K19 because of how fun it was to play. I mean, there's no denying that 2K got a lot of things so right with that game. And it's sad to think that was like the last game that you actually worked on. Like, that was the last good game we had before the horror that was 2K20. I mean, as I said, a really, really fun game to play, and I still love it, to be honest. So moving into my number one spot, and the number one spot, I think, for me, is WWE 2K14. So 2K14, for me, it's I love the game. I still go back and play it a lot on the Xbox 360, and I have a lot of fond memories of playing it, really fond memories of playing the game when it first came out on, as it hit on the Xbox 360. I mean, I was in secondary school when that game first came out in 2013. And it just felt like so much fun to play. Like, it really was a solid game. And there wasn't really anything bad that can be said about WWE 2K14. Like, we still had Road to WrestleMania, we still had Defeat the Street. Like, for me, 2K14 is one of the best games, that WWE has ever been released. It's like, yeah, some of the other games were pretty good, but they've not lived up to the hype of WWE 2K14. I mean, that game was just fire, it was on fire. Everything about that game was absolutely amazing. It really, really was. I personally, I'm trying to think of something bad or something negative to say about WWE 2K14, but it just feels like there isn't anything bad or negative that can really be said about it. It's just, it's crazy to think that it's been, over 10 years, just over 10 years now since the game, released, and people still love the game so much. It's still a very popular game. And it's not hard to see why 2K14 is still a popular game and is still, talked about like heavily even now, over 10 years on from it being released. Because it was so good, and it's a game that I think a lot of people have very fond memories of playing. It's certainly a game that I have very fond memories of playing, and obviously, it's one of the games that I do enjoy the most, as it is a solid game. There's no denying that the game is very, very good. So obviously I wanted to make one further additional point with WWE 2K20. There's a couple of additional points I wanted to make. One of the other points, the other reason I rated WWE 2K20 so badly and have it at the bottom of my list is because of the DLC. The DLCs were trash. They decided to change up the DLC lineup that year and give us these 2K originals. I don't know why they did that, as nobody asked them to do that, but it was just trash. Really, it was absolutely trash. It's just crazy to think that, the 2K20 was released in such a broken state. Like, if I was a video game developer, I would never want to release a game that was that bad. it was just absolutely horrendous. Hence why it's scored low down on my list. I'd love to know what your ratings are for WWE 2K for WWE for the WWE 2K games. What you would rate as the worst game, and what you would say was the best game. Maybe you agree with my choices. Maybe you guys have different opinions on what is the best 2K game and what the worst 2K game is. I'd love to know what you think about them. So that concludes today's video. I'll see you for another one soon. Bye bye.